It was pretty much established when Chamber of Secrets came out to theaters that Rowling's 7-book wizarding series would indeed make the translation to film. Now it was just a matter of which actors would stay on for the duration of the series, as well as, well, let's be honest, how long it would take for each film to come out. Thankfully, most of the cast stayed intact. Returning from previous films were none other than the central cast, Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, and Emma Watson, along with Warwick Davis, Alan Rickman, Maggie Smith, Robbie Coltrane, and Tom Felton in their respective roles. New for this installment was Gary Oldman, the malicious, sinister-faced title character Sirius Black, David Thewlis as the gentle-hearted Professor Lupin, Emma Thompson playing the peculiar, at times offbeat Professor Trelawney, and Timothy Spall as the sniveling rat Peter Wormtail Pettigrew. Unfortunately, due to the death of the late Richard Harris, the reins of Dumbledore would be handed over to Michael Gambon, who would play the aged and wise wizard for the rest of the series. It took some time for me to adjust to the change, even though it was evident that Gambon was doing as best he could to pay homage to Harris's groundwork. Harris's Dumbledore felt a little more dry, but because of that, he came off all the more wiser. Gambon's portrayal of the character feels gentler. There's more heart there, but it's definitely a performance he was growing into. By the time we got to Goblet of Fire, Gambon was already at the top of his game, delivering dialogue that I don't think would have sounded natural for Harris had he performed it. For the rest of these reviews, I won't be comparing the books as much, because essentially they all follow the source material very closely, and it's a given that the filmmakers had to take some things out. As the series grew, the books became much longer, and therefore more material had to be cut as the films went on. That's just the nature of the beast. So with that being said, let's dive into the third Harry Potter film. As is par for the course, we find Harry back at the Dursleys practicing some magic on his downtime. Harry gets a permission slip that will allow him entrance into Hogsmeade, a little village of magical shops that students get to visit beginning their third year. Vernon agrees to sign his permission slip as long as he behaves himself when his bitch of a sister, Aunt Marge, comes to visit.
Don't say yes in that ungrateful way. Good of my brother to keep you. He'd have been straight to an orphanage if he'd been dumped on my doorstep, Vernon.
Right away, Marge starts in on him, degrading his parents and ordering Harry around like a dog.
Quiet, Vernon, you. Clean it up. It's nothing to do with the father. It's always to do with the mother. You see it all the time with dogs. If there's something wrong with the bitch, then there's something wrong with the pup. Shut up!
She's a really unpleasant character from the start, and it's easy to see her relationship to the Dursleys. Harry gets angry and accidentally blows up Marge, causing instant tension between Harry and his uncle. Furious, Harry grabs his things and runs away from home, his biggest fear being that Hogwarts will expel him and send him to Azkaban prison, a sort of Alcatraz for wizards. For no reason at all, Harry gets picked up by a cartoonish wizard bus called the Night Bus, which is helmed by an acne-faced conductor named Stan Shunpike, who warns Harry that a killer named Sirius Black is on the loose. So the Night Bus drops Harry off at the Leaky Cauldron, where he's reunited with the bickering Ron and Hermione, angry with each other because Hermione's cat won't stop chasing Ron's aging rat Scabbers. Despite orders from the adults, Mr. Weasley takes Harry aside and warns him that Sirius Black, a follower of Lord Voldemort, has somehow escaped from Azkaban and is likely targeting him. On the train to Hogwarts, we get our first glimpse of a Dementor, a robed demon that looks like something out of the movie Scrooged. Basically, a Dementor has the uncanny ability to stop you from being cheerful. If you really piss one off, though, they perform what's called the Dementor's Kiss, administered in the most extreme circumstances, in which a Dementor eats your soul and leaves you as an empty shell.
Mentor's kiss. One can only imagine what that must be like to endure. It's said to be nearly unbearable to witness, but I'll do my best.
It's because of Sirius Black's escape that the Dementors are given free rein to stalk the castle grounds, and whenever Harry confronts one, he immediately goes into a seizure. It's also on the train that we're introduced to Professor Lupin, who remedies the problem with a good old piece of chocolate. You've got to love British people for their simplicity. As it turns out, Lupin is Harry's new defense against the dark arts teacher, and during their first lesson, he introduces a creature called a Bogart, a shapeless entity that the students can transform in order to combat their worst fears. This is one of my favorite scenes because not only does it display some humorous moments, but it also gives us a very small hint as to Lupin's true identity. Hagrid, now a professor, introduces everyone to a hippogriff named Buckbeak. For some reason, I always liked this creature. Harry goes for a ride, and then much to our pleasure, Buckbeak attacks Malfoy, which sets Buckbeak up for trial down the road. What is it with Hagrid and his infatuation with wild animals? First it was a dragon, then man-eating spiders, and now this thing. There's the usual fun Quidditch match, and as you'd expect, Harry's life is in danger. This time a horde of Dementors swoops down and attacks him, causing him to fall off his broomstick to certain death. Lupin offers his assistance by teaching Harry the Patronus Charm, a powerful bit of magic that will draw away the Dementors.
I think you would have given your father a run for his money, and that is saying something.
The other minor downer is that because of the whole Aunt Marge episode, obviously Harry didn't get his permission slip signed to go into Hogsmeade. He uses his invisibility cloak to try to sneak his way in when George and Fred hand him the Marauder's map, which prominently displays all of the secret passageways in the castle. Its most important feature, however, allows Harry to see everyone who is present in the castle, sort of like a medieval GPS. The third act is where things start to get weird. I know, this is a movie with all kinds of magical things, but bear with me. It's a little hard to explain, so I'll do my best. And just to let you know, this will contain spoilers. Harry gets this strange, off-kilter warning from a possessed Trelawney about the return of the Dark Lord's servant, whom we assume is Sirius Black. Harry, Ron, and Hermione go to visit Hagrid, who is distraught about Buckbeak's execution, and leave as the executioner arrives. Scabbers bites Ron, and as the three venture into the woods to chase the rat, a vicious black dog grabs Ron and drags him beneath the Whomping Willow. It's here that the dog transforms, revealing himself as Sirius Black. Professor Lupin enters the fray and joins Black's side, which causes Harry to question Lupin's loyalty. At this point, we're still assuming that Black's the main villain. Black finally reveals that Ron's old rat Scabbers is none other than Peter Pettigrew, and that it was him, not Black, who gave up Harry's parents to Voldemort. Professor Snape comes down at the absolute worst time,
Quarreling like an old married couple.
Why don't you run along and play with your chemistry set?
when Harry attacks him.
Harry, what did you just do?
You attacked a teacher!
Then, out of nowhere, Lupin turns into a werewolf, Black goes off into the darkness to keep him at bay, and Peter Pettigrew escapes. Lupin gets distracted by another werewolf's call, Black and Harry share a few heartwarming words, and then they all of a sudden get attacked by Dementors, until a Patronus in the form of a stag scares them away. When Harry wakes up, Hermione reveals that she's been getting by the whole semester with a time turner, a device that, what else, turned time. Getting advice from Dumbledore, the two travel back to the beginning of the third act, where they influence a bunch of events, somehow rescuing both Buckbeak and Sirius from certain death. Phew! And yes, that all happens. So long story short, up to this point, this was the most bizarre and complex of the Harry Potter films. The director this time was Alfonso Cuarón, who also helmed Y Tu Mamá También and A Little Princess. His vision departed from the source material a tad bit more. Don't get me wrong, he still remains very faithful. But unlike Chamber of Secrets, Cuarón put a fresh spin on the series, breathing new life into the movie and giving it a very festive feeling. This one, more than any of the other entries, feels like a Halloween film. It just has a very autumn-like, leaves-are-falling quality to it. The performances, as always, are top-notch, even Gambon's if you don't compare his performance to Richard Harris's, and the conclusion is heartwarming and hopeful. The only real negative I have to say about it is there's not enough of Sirius Black. He ends up being such a likable character, not to mention that he's pretty much in the title, as the Prisoner of Azkaban, but still. I would have liked to have seen more interaction toward the end with him and Harry. Prisoner of Azkaban is actually the lowest grossing film in the series, but many actually consider it one of the best. For some reason, I don't remember it being as big of a deal when it came out to theaters, maybe because at that point we were pretty much guaranteed a new one every 18 months. But it's a very enjoyable film and one-ups Chamber of Secrets with a better plot and more developed characters.